Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are looking at a deeply complex and often misunderstood institution through the eyes of Swami Vivekananda, the great apostle of practical Vedanta, from his seminal work, India and Her Problems, Chapter 6, Caste Problem. Forget the standard arguments. Swamiji doesn't treat caste as a holy religious doctrine. He strips away the mythology to analyze it for what it actually is, an ancient economic trade guild built for national survival that became over time into a rigid source of inequality. It eventually rotted from the inside out. We are going to look at his fierce takedown of social oppression and his practical blueprint for how to actually fix it. To break down his argument, we are following a clear 6-part roadmap. First, we'll separate social custom from spiritual faith. Second, we'll look at the original ideal behind the system. Third, we'll dissect the poison of exclusive privilege. Fourth, we'll confront the social disease Swamiji called don't-touchism. Finally, we will look at his ultimate solution, why simply fighting and arguing does not work, and why the ultimate equalizer is opening the doors of education to everyone. We will wrap up with some lessons for today.
Act 1. Society, not religion. Separating custom from faith. Think about the history lessons we learn in school about reformers like the Buddha or Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Swami Vivekananda argues they all made the same mistake. They mixed up social habits with religious truth. They tried to destroy faith and social structures at the same time, which is why they failed. In true Vedantic philosophy, caste does not exist. A person at the top and a person at the bottom are identical, spiritually equal. The caste system was actually a political outgrowth, a protective hereditary trade guild that saved society. Think of it like an ancient association of workers or craftsmen built to protect jobs and help the country survive. That had little to do with religion. Yet today, it transformed into a rigid custom driven by divine or religious directive. Crucially, Swamiji notes that modern trade competition has broken caste more than any preaching, and the only way to remove it completely is by giving people back their lost social individuality.
Act 2. The underlying ideal. The natural order of human growth.
To understand Swami Vivekananda's view, we have to look past family surnames. To him, being a Brahmin isn't about birth, it is a state of mind focused on wisdom, love, and zero selfishness. The ultimate spiritual ideal that the whole of society is meant to evolve toward. Swamiji argues that these original groupings were a natural stepping stone to civilization, based on fluid, inherent qualities rather than the Western method of the sword. In fact, he points out that ancient texts like the Mahabharata state humanity started out completely equal, only splitting into different groups later as human values dropped. He explains this using the 3 inner qualities or gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. These modes of energy exist in varying degrees within every single one of us, meaning the traits of a worker, merchant, warrior, or philosopher are inherent in everyone. Think about your own day. When you work a regular job for pay, you are in a mindset of service. When transacting business for profit, you operate as a merchant. When you stand up against an injustice in your neighborhood, you show the spirit of a warrior. And when you reflect quietly on deeper truths, you reach that high Brahmin ideal. This system was never meant to be a rigid, inescapable destiny of birth. It was simply a manifestation of natural human pursuits, where your character is determined by your current actions, not your family tree. Therefore, the grand plan of Indian civilization is to raise everyone to this ideal state of abundant wisdom and absolute selflessness. Think about it. If an entire society reaches this profound level of spiritual goodness, external laws and governments wouldn't even be necessary.
Swami Vivekananda notes a major difference between ancient Indian and Western societies. While the Western model was driven by the sword, focused on survival of the fittest, where the strong win and the weak drop out, the Indian Varna system, in its purest original intent, was meant to be the exact opposite. It was a societal structure specifically designed for the protection of the weak, gently guiding humanity toward a calm, pure, and meditative ideal. This is why Swamiji says something that surprises many today. He argues that completely abolishing this structure is nonsense. The structure itself isn't the enemy, the hoarding of privileges. The real equalizer isn't street fights or angry media debates. It is education. Swami Vivekananda explicitly states that when marginalized communities master deep cultural learning and language, historically Sanskrit, they automatically claim their rightful equal power.
Act 3. The poison of privilege. How inequality corrupts the system. Swami Vivekananda uses uncompromising language when discussing social status. Look around your own neighborhood. Different people do different jobs. One person governs the country, another runs a business, another cleans the street, and another mends shoes. But Swamiji asks a simple question. Just because you can read complex books, does that mean you can mend a shoe? No. Having an aptitude for philosophy versus manual labor does not make one person superior to another. Why then should anyone trample on another person's dignity? Dividing work is natural, but using your occupation to claim superiority is toxic. He demands that these unfair social privileges be completely knocked on the head, declaring that the days of exclusive claims must be made gone forever from India. Think about a fisherman. If you teach him the core truths of Vedanta, he will realize that the exact same divine spirit lives inside him as it does in the most educated philosopher. At the end of the day, the problem isn't the work we do. It is the hoarding of power and the denial of equal opportunity.
This brings us to Act 4, the superstition of untouchability, exposing the psychological disease of don't-touchism.
Swami Vivekananda fiercely attacks the practice of untouchability as an unorthodox superstition, calling it a form of mental disease. Historically, the mark of a noble person was living to serve the universe. True spirituality means serving others. But instead, people have started acting like they alone are pure while everyone else was dirty, shouting, "Don't touch me." Swamiji jokes bitterly that people have stopped looking for God in the human heart or the heavens and have literally locked him inside their kitchen cooking pots. This isn't religion. He warns that separating yourself from your own people out of a fake sense of superiority isn't holy. It is a toxic habit of self-contraction that completely drains a nation's strength and leads to societal death.
The tragedy was that our society was losing its compassion and degrading its own people out of sheer cowardice. Swamiji asks a cutting question. How will those who cannot even feed a hungry mouth with a crumb of bread grant salvation to others? He exposes a ridiculous hypocrisy that we still see versions of today. If a person from a marginalized caste walks into a neighborhood as they are, people shun them like the plague. But the second that exact same person converts to another faith, puts on a new coat, and comes back with a different title, the most traditional orthodox folks will suddenly offer them a chair and a hearty handshake. Swamiji asks, where is the heart in that? This cruelty and utter lack of sympathy is exactly what drives our people away. He demands that we kick these customs out, because unless every single one of us is lifted up, the nation can never truly awaken.
And now to Act 5, solving the caste problem, raising the lower to the level of the higher. So how do we fix this deep-rooted problem? Swami Vivekananda gives an answer that surprises a lot of people. Simply fighting, screaming at each other, or trying to humiliate the people at the top only divides and degrades the nation further. True empowerment, on the other hand, isn't about breaking social rules just to show off or rebel. The real mission is to elevate the most marginalized people in our society, all the way to that highest spiritual and moral standard. Tearing down the highly educated classes doesn't make anyone else smarter or stronger. It only weakens the entire community. Our monumental task is to lift the marginalized up, not pull everyone down. Swami Vivekananda has a severe warning for anyone who feels superior just because of their family name. To those nursing a false pride of birth, he says bluntly that it is the duty of every aristocracy to dig its own grave, and the sooner it does so, the better it is for everyone. His core argument is that the upper classes accumulated a vast treasury of culture and learning over the centuries. But by locking that treasury away from the masses, they directly caused 1,000 years of foreign invasions and national degradation. To illustrate this, he uses a striking Bengali superstition. If a cobra bites someone, the victim will only survive if the snake itself sucks the poison back out. Swamiji declares that the upper classes must now suck out their own poison. They need to drop their egos, act as servants to the community, break open the cells of hoarded knowledge, and distribute its values freely to everyone. At the same time, Swamiji gives a highly practical piece of advice to marginalized communities. He says to stop wasting valuable time and energy on useless debates or arguments. Doing so does zero good and only splits a society that is already, unfortunately, deeply divided. Don't just sit back and complain that others had more access or leverage in the past. His explicit instruction is to stop fighting and instead seize the ultimate weapon of leveling: education and spiritual culture. If you want real, unshakable power, you have to claim it through deep learning. Historically, Swamiji commanded people to master Sanskrit because it was the source of the higher caste's strength and the ultimate language of culture and status back then. The moment you master the very knowledge and skills that gave others their leverage, you instantly make yourself their equal. When you couple that cultural foundation with modern education, his message remains incredibly relevant today. True power is earned through education, not arguments.
Let's wrap up with lessons for our generation, understanding how privilege works in the modern world.
The main takeaway from Swami Vivekananda's words is highly practical for our generation. In any society, people will naturally have different social backgrounds, family histories, talents, and pursuits. The mistake happens when those differences are used to bully others or claim superiority, which is a massive spiritual and social failure. We see this pattern continually throughout history. A system or institution is created with protective or noble intent, but over time, the people within it realize they can use it to build walls. They hoard access to education, resources, and cultural capital, eventually viewing those outside their walls as fundamentally lesser. That is exactly when a system turns diabolical. Swamiji shows us that the solution isn't to burn down the entire system or destroy our culture. The real solution is to force those gates wide open, democratize education, and ensure every single citizen has the exact same tools to succeed.
As we wrap up today, Swami Vivekananda leaves us with a profound shift in perspective. Real change never comes from pointing fingers or waiting for a system to fix itself. It begins when we choose to expand our own hearts and minds. Swamiji firmly believed that true power is built through deep learning, and a true society is built when we use our own growth to lift others up rather than pulling anyone down. Before we close, let's challenge ourselves with two simple questions. First, in your everyday life, whether at college, at work, or at home, how can you consciously channel that high ideal of selflessness and wisdom in the way you treat the people around you? And second, what is one concrete skill, piece of knowledge, or opportunity you hold right now that you can actively share to help level the playing field for someone else in your community? True life is expansion, and the solution starts with what we choose to do next. Thank you.